College football season is underway, which means we can start talking about the 2022 NFL Draft. Yes, I know it's a long way off, but it will be here before you know it. And don't you want to go into the college football season, especially if your team needs a potential quarterback in the future? And while this class doesn't have the talent of last year's class, to me, it's a more intriguing class because you can make a case for 5 different quarterbacks to potentially be number one by the time we get to the draft in Las Vegas. But let's get right into it. Side note, this is my first draft. Obviously, things will change throughout the season. My opinions will change when I get more tape on these guys. But from what I've seen last year to looking at their first games this year, so here is Rich Sports Talk's top 5 quarterback prospects for the 2022 NFL Draft. Number 5, Carson Strong from Nevada. I have him on this list, and he will be the most, to me, intriguing prospect in this draft. And what do I mean by that? In terms of where he could go. My other 4 quarterbacks right now, I have going between the top 10 and mid-second round. Strong could be in the discussion for the number 1 quarterback, or he could be a day 3 flyer. Let me get to the good on him. Of all the quarterbacks in this draft, if they're looking for a traditional quarterback, he's the best guy because he's 6'4", around 215 pounds. And this is a small quarterback class. I mean, people were saying Zach Wilson was small. This one has a lot of guys that are just around 6 feet, maybe 6'2" on a good day. But really, Strong is the most prototypical quarterback when you think of the traditional quarterbacks. And if a general manager or front office is looking for that, that might be appealing. He's got a good arm. He can really drive the ball down the field. And look, he's not afraid to throw the ball into tight windows, but he does have mechanical issues. You can see it breaking down a little bit when he's under duress. And because he has that great arm, he has that tendency to try to force a couple throws. But here is the biggest reason. It's not the size. It's not the arm. That's going to wow people. He has had 3 knee surgeries on his right knee. 3. Of all the picks, his health is going to really define him. If he plays an entire season this year, looks great, and then more importantly, at the combine or through the medical process, that knee checks out, he could be a first-round selection. If it doesn't, and he gets hurt again, this could be a quarterback that falls all the way to day 3, where teams are just going to bring him in and see if, okay. But to me, he is the prospect that fluctuates the most, and it depends on not only his health during the season, but the important medicals after. Number 4, Matt Corral, Ole Miss. 6'2", he's got the height, but this is the concerning thing is he's 198 pounds. I do think you'll see him try to add some weight this season, especially before the combine. There's a lot I like about him. He's got quick eyes, quick feet, and you know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of a shortstop, like seeing that fluidity with the way he plays. I mean, we've seen this with quarterbacks like Kyler Murray, some of those baseball players. It's just really fluid throwing the football, going through those progressions. He's got underrated mobility that I think people sleep on. Look, he can make plays. We saw in the first game with Ole Miss. Needs to make better decisions. It looked like in that first game he had good decision making, but once again, he had a lot of turnovers. That will be a concern. If he can lower the mistakes and add some weight, especially during the time before the combine, he'll be up there. This, to me, could be a guy that has a Zach Wilson-like rise because of 2 really important factors. Number 1, he plays in the SEC. So he will be in big games, and he will be facing a lot of NFL prospects. So if he plays well against these SEC defenses, that's going to help bolster his stock. And number 2, he's in a Lane Kiffin offense. That highly benefits quarterbacks. The only drawback to that is, will people look at his production as production because Ole Miss has become a wide receiver factory and because of this offensive system that benefits the quarterback, or is it because of him? That will be a major discussion, but if he plays well in the SEC and he goes on the big stage and plays well, he could definitely find himself fighting for that first quarterback to come off the board and really could see a rise, similar to what we saw with Zach Wilson throughout the draft process. Number 3, Malik Willis, quarterback of Liberty. To me, he's the best athlete in this class. There is no question. The thing with Liberty is they play a couple decent teams this year, but not great. But for my money, he's arguably the most exciting quarterback to watch in this entire class because of that athleticism. I mean, he ran for nearly 1,000 yards and 14 TDs last year, 20 in the air. Once again, though, needs to work on the progressions, the reads, and the consistency of passing. You see sometimes that the consistency really is one of those guys too, and I get it. He has amazing athleticism and he has got amazing legs, so a lot of times it's a 1, maybe 2 progression read and then just takes off. But you also need to find a team that's going to build around his athleticism. If you're just looking for a traditional drop back quarterback, he might not be the best fit, especially early, but if you're going to build around his athleticism like Buffalo did with Josh Allen, like the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson, especially in their first year, and said, look, we're going to design a lot of running plays. We're going to design to get them on the ground, get them outside the pocket, and while they're getting confidence and making plays with their legs, they can slowly develop as a passer. So if a team's willing to do that, he's a highly explosive athlete. I think he's going to be the one that really at the combine, the pro days, is going to show off that athleticism. And if a team wants to build around an athletic quarterback, Willis definitely could be their guy. And for my money, he's the most exciting player of this group to watch this season. So you're going to want to watch some Liberty football this year. I know that you probably never thought about watching Liberty, and half of you probably like, what is Liberty for a university? But now you're going to have to watch those games. Number 2, Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma. Now, I know a lot of people have him number 1, and let me put this out there right now. I have a feeling by the end of the season, he will be the number 1 on my board. But as of now, as of coming into the season, the biggest things I worried about was turnovers and consistency. We saw him struggle against Tulane in the first game. We saw a lot of inconsistency early last season. He was able to finish the season strong. And look, he, to me, has some of the best tools in his draft. Impressive instincts, very good athleticism. But once again, undersized at 6 foot, 209 pounds. You can see him trying to use his legs a lot. At that size, I want to keep him maybe rolling outside the pocket, not trying to run down the field. Big arm, probably the best arm in this class. And look, he's going to win games at Oklahoma. And I do think that there are 2 very important factors that will help boost him to being the first quarterback off the board eventually. And they're very important. You need to talk about. Number 1 is where he's coming from. When you look at Oklahoma, they've become the quarterback factory of college football. Look at the last 3 quarterbacks that have gone out, and especially that do well this year. Baker Mayfield was a number 1 overall pick. You had Kyler Murray being a number 1 overall pick. You had Jalen Hurts, who will now start. If Jalen Hurts plays well this year, if Baker Mayfield's in the playoffs, if Kyler Murray looks like a top 10 quarterback, it's going to be hard for a general manager to convince an owner otherwise, saying, well, the track record at Oklahoma is the last 3 quarterbacks are playing well in the NFL. We need to take this guy. I do think that that's going to be a very important factor. And number 2 is, to me, they're going to get a shot in the college football playoff. If he plays well there, that's going to be another factor. Of all these quarterbacks, he's going to be the one that's likely going to be playing late in the season, in the postseason. And once again, everybody's eyes are on that game, so that will be huge. And number 1 in my book right now is Sam Howell. Of all these quarterbacks, he has maybe not the highest ceiling, but he's got the highest floor. To me, a perfect situation for him would be to fall to a team like New England, like last year with Mac Jones. Because to me, he is a solid quarterback. There's a lot of things I like that he does, but if you're asking him to be the guy that pulls a franchise and that plays with lesser talent, like if you're going to take him in the top 5, I would be wary because he struggled in the first game back at North Carolina. They lost a lot of pieces, and it's probably going to be a transition. But a lot of it's who I comp him to. And this draft is very hard to comp guys because they're a lot smaller guys. They're kind of tweeners. But for how it was easy, Baker Mayfield, they're the same size, 6'1", 225. They play the exact same way. They're both fiery leaders. Howell doesn't have the off the field issues that Baker did coming out. And if you look at side-by-side pictures of Baker Mayfield and Sam Howell, you would swear that they were related. It is scary how similar they look. Now, if Baker does well this year and that comp is used, that might help him. But like Baker Mayfield in the NFL, you're going to need pieces around him. You can't ask him to lift guys up. He can get you wins. You can win with Howell in the NFL. He can be a successful quarterback. But once again, we're going to really see, especially this year with lesser talent at North Carolina, can he lift them up? And to me, he's the safest pick of these quarterbacks. This class has a lot of risks. Howell, to me, is the safest bet. But once again, when you're drafting early in the draft, you're going to look for that upside. And I do think the upside is limited. Has a good arm, not great. Has good athleticism, not great. Like Baker Mayfield. I said this when Baker came out. I said, look, he'll be a successful NFL quarterback. Like, he'll be, to me, at best, an Alex Smith. A guy, if you put him on a good team, he can be efficient. He can get you to playoff games potentially. But if you're looking for a top 10 talent guy in the NFL, he will probably never be that. But once again, let's see how he plays this season. It's a long year, and we will be watching. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss any of our NFL draft content heading forward. Once again, hit that like button to get this video trending. We want to reach out to as many NFL fans as possible. And of course, reach out in the comments. Are there certain positions that you want me to talk about and give you lists for the drafts? I know the quarterbacks are important, but do you want receivers? Do you want pass rushers? Do you want offensive line? Let me know in the comments, and I will get on that right away. But until next time, this is Rich Sports Talk.